Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel where classic stories come alive. Today's video will be on the novel Hyperion, released in 1989 by Dan Simmons. It is one of science fiction's most haunting and beautiful masterpieces. Prologue. The Consul plays his ancient piano on his private ship when Mina Gladstone, the CEO of the Hegemony, a political structure composed of the resident and governing bodies of New Worlds, contacts him. She tells the Consul, formerly the Hegemony's lead political appointee for the planet Hyperion, that the Church of the Shrike, a religion dedicated to a powerful entity named the Shrike, and the All Thing, a forum for Hegemony members that works through neural implants, have chosen him to be part of the final pilgrimage. It is the last pilgrimage, as the time tombs, 6 mysterious constructions on Hyperion, are showing signs of opening, and a rebel band of ousters, genetically modified humans, are preparing an attack to invade Hyperion. The citizens of Hyperion are being evacuated, as not only will the impending interstellar war potentially kill multiple millions, but the terrifying Shrike has been killing people in areas of increasing distance from the tombs. One among the 7 pilgrims is likely an agent of the ousters. Gladstone tasks the Consul with finding out who the agent is and preventing the time tombs from opening or uncovering its secrets and those of the Shrike before they have fallen into enemy hands. Chapter 1. The Priest's Tale, The Man Who Cried God. The 7 pilgrims meet aboard the Templar tree ship Yggdrasil. Father Leonard Hoyt, a Catholic priest, Fedman Kassad, a retired colonel from the Hegemony Force, Martin Salinas, a poet, Sol Weintraub, a historian and scholar who is traveling with his infant daughter Rachel, Het Mastine, a Templar voice of the tree, or the tree ship that they are on, and Braun Lamia, a private investigator, and the Consul. Only a prime number of pilgrims can make the pilgrimage. As their journey to the time tombs will be long, they take turns telling their story for why they believe they were chosen for this Shrike pilgrimage, which may well result in their deaths. Leonard Hoyt begins by reading from the journals of Father Paul Duret, a disgraced priest sent to Hyperion as punishment for falsifying archaeological evidence on another planet in order to renew interest in the dying Catholic Church. Duret decided that his missionary work should be ethnographic, studying the little-known Bikura people who live in a remote area beyond the dangerous flame forests and Tesla trees on Hyperion. One morning he awoke to find his local guide murdered. He soon found the diminutive Bikura, who told him that the guide died the true death, and that they spared Duret because he belongs to the cruciform. 53. Duret interpreted this to mean that the Bikura did not kill him because he was a priest and wore a cross, but in reality the Bikura mistook the priest's crucifix for the mark of the cruciform, a parasitic organism that inhabits all of the Bikura tribe and can resurrect them after death. The Bikura referred to themselves as the 70, as they descended from the first 70 settlers. Duret lived with the Bikura and began to believe that they were unintelligent. He found them to have a placid idiocy, similar to earlier reports. 51. In the evenings, the Bikura would descend the cliffs, but forbade Duret from following. The priest was perturbed by the fact that there were no Bikura children. One of the Bikura told him that their members return after death, which confused Duret. One day, while the Bikura were out foraging, Duret descended the cliff and discovered a basilica-like room carved out of the stone, which appeared to be thousands of years old, predating the Hegira, or Exodus from old Earth, and which contained a crucifix on an altar. This discovery had significant implications for the church, and Duret was anxious to send his findings back to his superiors. Before he could, however, the Bikura saw him shirtless and realized that the cross he wore was not the mark of the parasitic cruciform. They took him down the cliffs past the basilica to the labyrinth. Hyperion is one of the 9 Earth-like worlds that contain ancient and mysterious labyrinths. Cross-shaped organic creatures called the cruciform covered the walls and emitted a roseate glow. A tall silver being called the Shrike approached Duret. The Shrike had 4 arms, covered with blades, and blood-red gem-like eyes. The Shrike embraced Duret before disappearing. The Bikura tied one of the cruciform creatures around the priest's neck, and it ceased to glow. At first, Duret believed that the cruciform had become inactive and was now just like any other crucifix. However, the next day Duray awoke and was unable to remove the cruciform from his body. The cruciform burrowed in and formed a network within Duray's body. When Duray tried to leave the Bakura's territory, the cruciform caused him intense pain to the point of unconsciousness. One of the Bakura, whom Duray named Alpha, died from a fall while foraging. Duray returned Alpha's body to the Bakura. He was astonished to discover that when the Bakura die, the cruciform breaks the body down quickly and reforms it. Thus, the Bakura never really die, but each new iteration lives a banal half-existence. In his last journal entry, Duray wrote about his intention to escape the Bakura through the flame forest. He planned to hide his journal and research in a protective pouch. In the present, Hoyt recounts how he returned to Hyperion to find Duray after 8 local years. Time debts accrue with space travel, meaning that one doesn't age as rapidly in space, so it was only 1 month to Hoyt. Hoyt tells the other pilgrims that the Bakura told him Father Duray died trying to enter the flame forest and that his cruciform was destroyed as well. Hoyt retires to his cabin as he is feeling ill. The consul goes to his room, sees the young priest writhing in pain, and withholds the painkiller injection unless Hoyt tells him the true story. Hoyt admits that he lied. Father Duray was still alive when Hoyt found him. He had staked himself to a Tesla tree that would burn him and the cruciform periodically. He had been in that excruciating state of death and resurrection for 7 years. When Hoyt removed the pouch containing Duray's journal and research, Duray's cruciform fell off and Duray finally died. The Bakura took Hoyt to the labyrinth, and now he carries both a cruciform of his own and that of Father Duray. 2. The Soldier's Tale of the War Lovers. The pilgrims arrive in Keats, Hyperion's capital. The consul meets his former aide Theo, who is now the governor-general of Hyperion, the newest world in the hegemony. Theo reports that there have been over 20,000 deaths and disappearances attributed to the Shrike, and many of them have been the self-defense force. The hegemony's force has only served to control the mob people trying to flee to safety. Theo shows them the ruins of the Shrike temple, which was recently destroyed by people angry with the Shrike cultists. After Theo departs, the pilgrims go to a bar, but are quickly escorted onto the river barge Benares by an android. The former soldier, Fedman Kassad, then tells his tale. Fedman Kassad, a member of the Palestinian diaspora, grew up in a poor and violent neighborhood. As a teenager, he joined the force military when given a choice by a judge. He realized that he enjoyed the orderliness of military life, especially the new Bushido Code, which is based on the principles of Japan's samurai and center on self-respect, duty, and honor. During a war simulation at the Olympus Command School, Historical Tactical Network, he was cornered by an enemy in a simulation of the 1415 Battle of Agincourt. Suddenly, a beautiful young woman appeared. Together, they killed the enemy, after which they made love. The woman appeared in other simulations with similar endings. They kill the enemy, then have sex. An obsessed Kassad didn't know whether she was real or part of the simulations. He would dream of her too. Kassad's military career kept rising, and he was put in a leadership position when the Oosters attacked Brescia. He became known as the Butcher of South Brescia. 13. Some people wanted him court-martialed, while others viewed him as a hero. After suffering a serious injury days after the war, he awoke on a medical ship bound for Hyperion, just as it was attacked by Oosters. He managed to escape in a small ouster pod as it tumbled to the planet and regained consciousness on Hyperion in the City of Poets, with the woman he called Mystery tending to him. She told him her name was Moneta or Mnemosyne, and that their meeting was in her past and his future, because the time tombs were moving backward in time. She took him to see the Pain Lord, the Shrike. Kassad saw the huge silver tree of thorns upon which the Shrike's victims writhe. Covered in a special force field that manipulates time, the two followed the Shrike to where the two ousters landed in pursuit of Kassad. By slowing and stopping time, the trio was able to kill most of the ousters with ease. Kassad was initially disturbed by the unfairness of this, as it did not align with the code of the new Bushido, but he gave in to his bloodlust. Afterward, as Moneta made love to him, he had visions of wars and the death of worlds. 170. Then Moneta partially turned into the Shrike. He fled in terror and was found by Hyperion's self-defense force a while later. He resigned from the military and became involved in anti-war movements. Kassad's story raises questions with the other pilgrims, such as whether it is known that the Shrike can shapeshift. The consul asked Kassad if he saw any of the pilgrims on the Tree of Thorns. He did, but he refuses to tell them who he saw. He believes that he is meant to play a part in starting the interstellar war of which he had visions. When asked what he will petition the Shrike for, he responds that he will not petition, but will kill him and Moneta. Chapter 3. The Poet's Tale, Hyperion Cantos. The Benares barge arrives at the port city of Naiad to find a charred ruin where there had once been a thriving city of 20,000. The consul believes the SDF, self-defense force, caused the damage, probably in fighting against the Shrike. He has been drinking all day, as has Martin Silenus, to distance himself from painful memories. Silenus tells his tale. Martin Silenus arrived on Hyperion 2 centuries previously with Sad King Billy and many other artists who were part of the Windsor in Exile artistic colony on Asquith, Windsor in Exile being the official Hyperion government. At that time, the planet had already been seeded with the descendants of people who arrived 2 centuries earlier and had gone indigene. Sad King Billy and the cohort of artists suppressed these existing occupants and forced them to work alongside their androids to build a city of poets. Silenus restarts his tale with the story of his origins and how he came to Hyperion. He was born on Old Earth to a wealthy family that stayed behind when most of the planet fled during the Hegera. As the cataclysms on Old Earth worsened, his mother put him on a slower-than-light ship bound for the planet Heaven's Gate, hoping that when he awakened from cryogenic fugue 167 years later, the money in an off-world bank would have accrued enough interest to pay off the family's debts and allow Martin to live well. That, however, did not occur. Silenus had a stroke from the fugue that limited his vocabulary to 9 curse words. He wound up laboring in the slop canals. There he claims he became a poet, as his mind was liberated and he had to confront the painful reality of life for millions. As he recovered, the words came back to him, and he started writing poetry about his life and the dying of Old Earth. One day he was attacked by a bully who scattered the pages of his manuscript. However, the wife of a local manager saw the attack and gathered the papers before taking Silenus to the hospital. She read the manuscript and sent it to someone she knew with connections to the publishing world. The editor titled the book The Dying Earth and removed most of the philosophical, personal, and experimental parts of it, instead focusing on the final days of the planet. It sold billions of copies, making Silenus very wealthy. The woman who found him divorced her husband and married Silenus. Together they lived a posh life of traveling all around the web and taking fashionable drugs. Increasingly, though, his wife's use of the flashback drug, which enables one to viscerally relive memories, put a distance between them. He had stopped using it after his second try when he flashed back to a memory when he was 4 and found his mother unresponsive while on flashback. Silenus pushed to have his cantos published. Tyrina, Silenus's editor, had declared his poetry to be beautiful but completely unsellable. She was right, and Silenus owed a large debt to the publishing company for the advance, which he made up for by writing sequels to his first book called The Chronicles of the Dying Earth. These were very popular, but he did not enjoy them, for he saw them as trite, sensationalistic claptrap. After the 9th book, he quit and moved to Asquith to join Sad King Billy, who became his friend. For years, Silenus struggled with writing and felt his muse had left him. When he moved to Hyperion, he had himself bioengineered to look like a satyr, part man and part horse, and gave in to his hedonistic impulses. Silenus continued to struggle and began to contemplate death by suicide. Then people started disappearing from the city of poets. Then instead of disappearing, people were found slaughtered. All of the residents of the city of poets fled, fearing the Shrike was behind the murders. But Silenus remained because his muse had returned and he was writing again, this time about the death of humanity. Silenus removed the satyr alterations. One night the sad King Billy visited him and implored him to stop writing his Hyperion cantos because he believed it had somehow conjured the Shrike, who had become Silenus's muse. The king started to burn the manuscript when the Shrike appeared and attacked him. Silenus set fire to both the papers and the king in the Shrike's arms. After Silenus stayed some time in the abandoned city of poets, he is not sure how long because he lost touch with reality. Eventually he left Hyperion, determined to finish the poem he was working on. Chapter 4, The Scholar's Tale. The river Lethe's taste is bitter. The pilgrims arrive at the small, mostly deserted port of Edge, where the barge's android crew leaves in a launch after the pilgrims unload their baggage. The pilgrims will cross the vast plain of the Sea of Grass in a wind wagon, which resembles a sailing vessel and has not yet arrived. They light a bonfire to signal their presence. Hyperion points out that there is probably something useful or meaningful in their baggage for their eventual meeting with the Shrike, such as Silenus's manuscript or Kassad's weapons. Hyperion carries a Mobius cube, which could contain anything from an ancient artifact to a nuclear explosion, but he does not say what is in it. The wind wagon arrives, though it does not have a crew. Sol Weintraub is next to tell his story. Sol Weintraub lived on the planet of Barnard's World, which had a good university named Nightenhelser in the middle of agricultural fields. He and his wife Sarai had one child, a daughter named Rachel, who was bright and sensitive. After her university studies, she became an archaeologist and joined a research mission to Hyperion to study the time tombs, specifically the Sphinx. Her lover, Melio Arundez, led the mission. The Sphinx tomb was presumed to be safe from the time tides, the anti-entropic fields that emanate from the tombs and create time tides, or temporal distortions. They had sensors set up all around the area to monitor the flow of the tides. One night, Rachel was alone, deep in the honeycomb of the Sphinx tomb, to monitor data coming in to detect possible niches in the rock above the tomb, when the instrument started showing vast spaces above her. She heard footsteps and all of the lights, including the ones that did not require electricity to run, went out. She was found in a coma and brought to a medical center on the planet of Renaissance Vector. Saul and Sarai visited her there and learned that Rachel was aging backward, what became known as Merlin's disease. After she sleeps, or every 30 hours or so, she forgets a day of her life. She made a recording for herself to play every morning to remind her of her condition and of the things she might start forgetting. There was nothing any doctors could do for her condition was unknown in the entire universe. Resigned, Rachel went to live with Melio and continue graduate school for a while. Eventually, she had to break up with him and drop out of school because every morning he was a stranger to her, and day by day she would forget the things she had just learned. She returned home to live with her parents. Sol had a recurring dream where he was in a dark cavern lit by two red orbs. A voice told him that he must take Rachel to Hyperion to serve as a burnt offering. Sol argued with the voice. When awake, Sol started to argue with God, specifically around the story of Abraham, whom God told to sacrifice his son Isaac as a test of his faith. On Rachel's 21st birthday, she told Sol that the recordings she viewed every morning were just too painful. They made her realize all that she had lost and was losing. She convinced her parents to let her just be, to live without remembering the trauma that was happening to her. They agreed and even got Polson treatments to make them appear younger and to help Rachel not be so confused when she awoke each morning. Melio visited when Rachel had reverted to a preteen to tell Sol that he would continue the research in order to help Rachel. Seeing her disturbed him so much that he never visited again. Sol then went to the Church of the Shrike on Lucis for help. However, the bishop said that the avatar, the Shrike, had chosen Rachel, and there was nothing they could do for her. Sol was thrown out of the temple and barred from entering any other Shrike churches. When Rachel turned 7, the media latched onto her story, and her plight became a sensation. The family moved to Hebron to live on a Jewish kibbutz in order to avoid press intrusions and have some privacy. Though it was peaceful there, Rachel kept losing memories, age, skills, and abilities. Sarai admitted to Saul that she had had the same dream of the red-lit cavern, though there was also a golem in her dream that Rachel had seen in the tomb. She said that they should take Rachel to Hyperion and offer themselves as sacrifice instead of her. Saul refused. Sarai then visited her sister on another planet and died in an accident. Alone and unable to grieve his wife in front of young Rachel, Saul started doing media events to put pressure on the hegemony and the Shrike Temple to allow him to take Rachel to Hyperion. Further research into the time tombs had been banned after Rachel's accident. In Soul's next dream, he refused to make sacrifices to any gods. By the time he started on the pilgrimage, Rachel was only a few weeks old. After his tale, Cassad and the Consul take the first night watch on the Windwagon. Chapter 5. The Detective's Tale, The Long Goodbye. In the morning, the Consul discovers blood splattered all over Hetmastine's room. A search reveals that Het is missing. Silenus thinks the Shrike killed him. The Mobius cube is still locked. The pilgrims speculate that it holds an a sentient being the Templars used to manipulate force fields. Hetmastine would have been the next to tell his story, but now it is Braun Lamia's turn. The pilgrims arrive at Pilgrim's Rest expecting Shrike Temple representatives, but it is empty. They get in the tram car, which Cassad gets moving, and travel toward the mountain peaks. It would have been Hetmastine's turn to tell his story, but as he is missing, presumed dead, Braun Lamia tells her tale. Lamia was in her office on Lucis when a man named Johnny visited her. She found Johnny attractive, but he revealed that he was a cybrid. Cybrids are a rare form of AI consciousness embedded in a human body, and asked her to find out who murdered him. Johnny recalled how he was attacked on the planet Madhya and disconnected from the technocore, the shared center of AI consciousness, for a full minute, which lost him 5 days of memory. Johnny likened this disconnection to human death. Johnny disclosed that he was originally created as part of a project to retrieve information about long-dead writers and was based on the poet John Keats. Lamia visited BB, an AI expert, who told her that cybrids have been disappearing. BB knew that some AIs in the technocore were orchestrating the recycling of cybrids, but he didn't know why. Lamia began to gather information on Johnny's movements over the days leading up to his murder. Lamia met Johnny for dinner, and he told her that she reminded him of Fanny, the woman Keats wanted to marry but couldn't because he didn't have the finances to support her. Following him, she learned that he spent most of his time in an archives library on Renaissance Vector, an old web world, looking for the rest of Keats's unfinished poem, Hyperion. Following his credit wave to the last place he went before the attack, Lamia went to a bar near the library and interrogated a witness who said that Johnny had met with a Templar and was later joined by a Lucian with a queue of hair, a hairstyle whereby the front portion of the head is shaved and a single braid remains at the back of the head, with whom Johnny left later. Johnny then called Lamia with an emergency. He had just been attacked in his apartment. Lamia deduced that the man with the queue was involved in the attacks on Johnny, but that the intention was to kidnap rather than kill him. Lamia concocted a plan for Johnny to allow the man with the queue of hair to follow him to God's Grove, the Templar planet, where she would be waiting. Johnny and Lamia carried out this plan, but the man with the queue escaped, and Lamia chased him through farcaster portals on different worlds. Just as she seized him on Maui Covenant, he was destroyed by an electrical surge, indicating that he too was a cybrid. The police arrived. Lamia got on a hawking mat, akin to a flying carpet, which Johnny controlled in the datasphere. Via a farcaster portal, she joined him on a planet in the Hercules cluster that was an exact replica of old Earth in different eras. They were in Italy from 1821 in the exact place where John Keats died. Lamia wanted to know why Technocore went to the trouble to make this replica and what its purpose was, but Johnny didn't know. They made love but soon were attacked by 5 men from the Lusian Shrike Temple, whom they defeated. Johnny had never heard of the planet Hyperion, which was unusual since he was part of the datasphere. Technocore somehow had blocked all knowledge of it from him. He and Lamia speculated that perhaps he had discovered something about it and had to be recycled. They went to the Shrike Temple on Lucis, where the bishop told them that Johnny had been there prior to his attack, inquiring about going on a pilgrimage. The man with the queue was with him as his bodyguard, provided by Technocore. This surprised the pair greatly. Trying to figure it out, Johnny explained to Lamia that Technocore has no contact with Hyperion at all, since its datasphere is so primitive. But that is rather unusual, since it even has contact with the Oosters. Lamia then visited Mina Gladstone, who knew her parents, as her father was a senator. Lamia said that her case led back to her father's apparent suicide, which she believed was not really a suicide. He had died right before the bill he was working on with Gladstone to bring Hyperion into the hegemony protectorate could be finished. Gladstone knew all about the Keats Cybrid and the AI's Ultimate Intelligence Project, which involved being able to predict everything. The AIs have been interested in Hyperion and the time tombs because they are anomalies. The time tombs are the remnants of a field that propelled contents backward from a far future time, and they will be full when they open soon. Johnny had a plan to invest his entire consciousness in the Cybrid and go to Hyperion as a human pilgrim. To achieve that, Johnny and Lamia contacted BB Surbringer, a cyberpuke hacker, to access the core when the AI known as Johnny dies. Lamia went with him, but the security phages and guards attacked them and killed BB. However, he got the data out just before dying. Johnny explained to Lamia that Technocore has three factions: the stables, the older AIs who wanted to work with humans, the volatiles who wanted to destroy humanity, and the ultimates who would play both sides to determine the best outcome. He knew from the core that there will be an interstellar war, but it was unclear what role Hyperion would play in that. While Lamia slept, Johnny installed a neural shunt in her head so that she could interface with him. It was a Schroen loop, which meant that she couldn't access the planet's worth of information but would be a carrier of it. They armored up and approached the Shrike temple as the only way they could get to Hyperion. They were heavily attacked and Johnny was killed, but not before sending all of his data to Lamia. She recovered in the Shrike temple, where the priests chanted around her. She went to the archives library and read some Keats poems. She is pregnant with Johnny's child. Chapter 6. The Consul's Tale, Remembering Siri. The pilgrims arrive at Kronos Keep, which is not only recently abandoned, but has signs of bloodshed. They opt to spend the night there before going on. However, their group is no longer a prime number, which superstition says appeases the Shrike. Rachel does not count, as the pilgrims must decide for themselves to make the journey. The Ouster War begins above them. While watching the battle's bursts of light, they spy a tall, hooded figure walking toward the time tombs. The Consul reluctantly pulls out an old comm log, a communication device, to set the background for his story. His grandfather, 19-year-old Marin Aspic, was a shipman on a spin ship, a ship used mostly for interstellar travel, helping to build and install farcasters. While working above Maui Covenant, he went to the planet with a friend. His friend Mike convinced him to leave the boring isle to which they were restricted and fly off on hawking mats to a festival of inhabitants on First Sight, another isle. At a masquerade there, Marin met 15-year-old Siri and fell in love. They spent several days together until Siri's cousin Bertolm, the son of a separatist, a rebel movement that opposed Maui Covenant's incorporation into the hegemony, attacked and killed Mike for being with the hegemony. In turn, Marin killed Bertolm. He then fled with Siri but left when the security crew of his ship came for him. For his crime, Marin was reduced in rank and not allowed to have rest and relaxation off-ship. However, 11 months later, his commander ordered him back to Maui Covenant as Marin's involvement with Siri had become something of a legend. His 11 months away were 7 years for her since he was traveling in space, which slows aging. During Marin's time away, Siri had also born his son, a boy named Alon. Periodically, Marin would have to go back to his ship, but his relationship with Siri continued, even as he stayed in his 20s, while she eventually aged into her 70s. During one of Marin's stays with Siri, she took him swimming under one of the modal isles that the planet was known for, and with a device they were able to speak to the dolphins who had been brought from old Earth. The dolphins told him that they missed the sharks and whales. Siri was concerned about what effects having a farcaster and joining the hegemony would have on Maui Covenant with the influx of tourists and developers. Marin and Siri had another son named Donald, who later joined the Hegemony Council. In the intervening years, Siri gained prominence and power on Maui Covenant and was even able to deter an angry mob that wanted to attack the Hegemony crew. Marin and Siri had 6 reunions, but the 7th was Siri's funeral and the inauguration of the Farcaster. Marin entered her tomb to find a box with his name on it, containing Mike's old hawking mat and recordings from Siri. In one recording, she told him that their son Alon had been killed, and it wasn't an accident. The council police killed him because he was with the separatists. Marin understood what she wanted. Shortly after the Farcaster came into operation, he detonated the bomb he had planted on it for her. Thus began Siri's rebellion. in which Marin died. Before his death, Marin gave his grandson, Donald's son, the comm log recording with all this information. The Consul is that grandson, and Marin forbade him from joining the rebellion. Eventually, the rebellion was suppressed and Maui Covenant was brought into the Hegemony Protectorate. The Consul studied on the Hegemony's main planet, Tau City Center, and joined the diplomatic corps. He married a woman descended from Ceres' cousin Bertol and worked in the outback worlds for the Hegemony, lying to colonists about the future effects of joining the Hegemony and exterminating any intelligent indigenous life. He developed an addiction to alcohol and moved his family to Brescia just before the Ulsters attacked it. His wife and young son were killed in the attack. The Consul was then promoted and sent to negotiate with the Ulsters. He came to see that they are more evolved than the rest of humanity in the web, which clings to the old ways. The Ulsters told him that the destruction of old Earth was not an accident. They gave him a device to open the time tombs and release the Shrike upon the worlds. While he was the Consul of Hyperion, he let his aide do the governing. Meanwhile, he awaited a signal from the Ulsters, who understand space-time better than the Hegemony and could shield against the anti-entropic fields of the time tombs and collapse them. The Consul went to the tombs with 3 Ulsters who debated using the device to open them, even though it would take months to work completely. The order was to wait until the attack on Hyperion was imminent before activating it, as there were ethical qualms. The Consul then killed the Ulsters, activated the device, and reported to Ulster Command that the Shrike had killed them. The other pilgrims debate whether they should kill the Consul, as he was a double agent, the Ulster spy. They accuse him of killing Het Mustine, but the Consul claims innocence. He says that Het's reaction to his tree ship burning, a tree to which he was telepathically connected, was muted, strange, as if he knew it was going to happen. The pilgrims ultimately decide to absolve him as a man who sought revenge for the harm done to his family by both the Hegemony and the Ulsters. Epilogue. The pilgrims leave all their possessions behind except for what they need to face the Shrike. They trek out to the time tombs, which are glowing in different colors. Soul starts humming an ancient tune to soothe Rachel, and the others join in. It is a song from The Wizard of Oz. They hold hands and descend into the valley.